This episode of the Critical Careers Podcast is sponsored by CBRE. Hi, I'm Joyce Wady, and welcome to the Critical Careers Podcast. On today's show, we are thrilled to welcome Dame Dawn Childs, CEO of Pure Data Centres, and Andrea Stosic, Senior Regional Manager for NTT Data, to talk about women in engineering. We take a look at Dawn and Andrea's career paths, the varied roles available in engineering, and the need to reach a broader audience when it comes to engineering recruiting. We hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much to both of you for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the podcast. And really, the reason I wanted to have this conversation was when I was doing the interviews for the book, one of the things that I heard a couple of different times is across all of the different job functions that women hold within the industry, the one area where they didn't seem to think there was the same level of representation was in engineering. And it's, from the outside perspective, I mean, I can sort of see that, and, if people might perceive it to be complex or very technical. I think there's also a side to it, that it's a very, that you're doing a lot of creative problem solving, to make the digital infrastructure that we all depend on, like, function and run and innovate and everything each day. And, there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening in this space. And it's really a shame that if people don't fully either understand it or don't have the same awareness of it. And I really was hoping that we could just kind of have a conversation about that. Both of you have been, have built careers in engineering or as an engineering as a basis. And, I'd love to know from your perspectives, kind of what it takes to succeed. And also, what do we need to do to kind of make the data center industry become a bit more inclusive for female engineers moving forward? So I'd like to go ahead and get started, and kind of along those lines, what's inspired each of you to pursue a career in engineering? And maybe, Andrea, we can start with you.
Sure. My parents actually inspired me to become an engineer, as both of them are engineers, and they managed to persuade me to follow my dad's electrical engineering footsteps. And and I think really with their example, they showed me that you can actually create a very successful and rewarding career in engineering, and that it can really turn your life around even. And I guess following that example, even though statistically I was aware that there were and still are a lot less women in engineering than men, I never saw it as an obstacle or as a disadvantage. I merely saw it as a statistics, right? So it did not discourage me to pursue a career in engineering, seeing how well my parents have done in that industry.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's a really important point. Don't let statistics deter you from anything. If it's something you have an
Exactly.
interest in, you absolutely should go and pursue it. So, Dawn, what about you? What inspired you?
And so mine's not quite so lovely to be described as Andrea's. I wanted to go to university. My parents couldn't afford to send me to university. Engineering was the course that attracted the most sponsorship. So yeah, I was sort of good at maths and science, and didn't really think why I shouldn't be an engineer. My dad was a car mechanic, so I could kind of get some inspiration there for not being worried about technology or engineering. But yeah, mine was a financially motivated decision.
Which, is a totally valid path to choose for many, many people. So that's, and I think it is good for people to hear that too, because I think it's a good reason, and it's a very valid reason that a lot of people face when they are looking to go to university. So now, Dawn, I know, so you and I, when we talked for the book, and we've chatted about this a couple of different times, you have had a wonderfully diverse career. You have touched so many different types of industries, but it's, at the heart of it has been engineering. Can you tell us a little bit about that pathway, and kind of maybe what, helped you to get from what each industry taught you as you move from sector to sector?
Certainly. And so every single sector I've joined, I've meant to stay there. So I've joined because I'm excited by the sector, or the type of engineering intrigues me. So just to help everybody navigate my slightly weird path with me, I went from the Air Force, military, looking after maintenance teams, fixing aircraft for 20 plus years. I then went to Gatwick Airport. So still aircraft, but actually looking after the infrastructure of the airport itself rather than the aircraft at the airport. Then theme parks, and then national grid, so critical national infrastructure, and now data centers. So all of them have a technical bias. And the reason that I've moved on from industry to industry was because I got career blocked effectively. So whenever my aspiration and desire to progress sort of exceeded where I thought I could get to in the sector I was in, I chose to move. And quite bizarrely almost, if you looked at the career path to becoming a CEO in the data center sector, you all of the career moments that I've had lead me to that. So in the military, I get the critical thinking, crisis management, being able to operate under pressure, managing teams and leadership. I then go to the airport where I get my first touch on infrastructure engineering, again crisis management, because anyone that travels through an airport knows that there is quite a lot of disruption. So the crisis management piece and critical national infrastructure piece are there too. I then get theme parks. So this is the diversity of engineering, understanding problems, understanding challenges, and actually working with the public, which was quite a nuance for me. It was quite close. Then national grid, critical national infrastructure, power, which for the data center sector is really important. And you put those all together, the data center sector is critical national infrastructure. You have crises to manage. It's super high reliability, so 5 9, so 99.999%. So all of that engineering and being able to deliver that is important. And of course, the power tangent, because now power is if you're in the data center sector, you're also in the power sector. So bizarrely, my career has led me to here without me even knowing it.
And I love that because I mean I'm kind of a firm believer in that myself, like every step along the path kind of leads you to the next one. So, and and I do love that you were so upfront and so honest about, the fact that of when you have hit career ceilings that you have just been okay, that's, then it's time to move and try to something new, because I think a lot of times as women we can be a little bit more hesitant on that, or maybe not as comfortable owning that.
There's a thing called the Cinderella complex, which women particularly suffer from. And if you all know the fairy tale, Cinderella, the fairy comes along and tells her, "You shall go to the ball." And women are very good at working really, really hard and really believing that at some point somebody will notice how brilliant they are and how hard they're working, and they will get a promotion. Unfortunately, life isn't like that. So if you don't get the promotion you want where you are, and trust me, I tried every which way. If you don't get it, then find somewhere where you can
Yeah.
achieve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And and here you are today. You have figured that out for yourself. So
Go
which
to
has
the
been
ball.
fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Go to the ball. Own that moment in the ball. So, Andre, when we spoke about the book, one of the things I know you had told me was that you really had wished you had found the data center industry earlier in your career. Is there any, can you tell me a little bit more about that, about what made you feel that way? And
Yes, for sure. I mean, I always say that I wish I had started straight from uni and that my first graduate job was straight in data centers. But okay, that's not how it happened. I originally started working in the building services industry, and again, I did sort of do what I can and try to make it as engaging and as interesting as I could, but I didn't really feel that I was fully utilizing the knowledge that I got at my university, particularly in terms of the power systems and the high voltage engineering that I was focused on during my master's degree. And therefore, I really started looking into my options and seeing what else is out there. And a consultancy that I worked for at the time, they had a different sort of completely separate mission critical department. So I started just talking to some of my colleagues, electrical engineers that worked there, just asking them about their projects, about what exactly they do. And I just realized, oh, it's all about the power, as Dawn says. And I thought, wow, the transformers are really bigger. The generators are all over the place. There's UPSs. There's everything that you don't necessarily see in every building services project because there's no need for that much resilience. And then, so once I found out more about it, I was just completely sold. I thought I would ask for an internal transfer and I'll see where it takes me. I got the transfer. I started working at the same level that I was before. So then I thought, okay, I don't want to be behind anyone who's been in the data center industry since day one. So what I decided to do is, invest some of my own time after work to try to refresh all of my knowledge from university that was still there. It really just needed it needed a little bit of a refreshment. And really, like many times in my free time, I would read tech subs and stuff, not because anyone asked me or I had to, just because I wanted to. I wanted to get up to speed quickly. I wanted to work on the best projects. I wanted to have a good role on the project. I wanted to lead the project electrically. So I thought, okay, it wouldn't be fair unless I do all the hard work
Right.
that would allow me to do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, I mean, so since you've been now, how long, so how many years have you been in the focusing on the data center sector?
I'd say 5 years now.
Okay.
So, which is,
So you've seen a lot of change on that power and electrical side of things of where we were
yes,
5 years ago compared to where we are today.
yeah, it doesn't sound like a long time, but I think in the data center industry is actually quite eventful 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I get from both your perspective, I mean, what for women, for, whether they're young women or women looking to make a pivot into, into the industry, are there what are the entry points that women could be thinking about if they really want to come into the sector but didn't study engineering from the start? Do you think there's some natural places that they can come in, or or is it you need to have that first box tick to be able to do it?
Definitely there are some natural stepping in points, which could be an apprenticeship scheme. So if you're wanting to be a hands-on engineer on a data center site, you could become an apprentice and pick up your trade that way. Or else you could get embedded into a company to start a graduate scheme or the like, and pick up your trade as you go. So not necessarily an apprenticeship, but just learning as you progress, because there are multiple roles that aren't super technical. So yes, of course, there are the design side and the consultancy side and embedded engineers who really need to have that level of capability and competence to begin with. But there are also multiple aligned roles where you could maybe work on the investment side, or perhaps look at some of the feasibility pieces. So understanding land purchasing or the like, and then move across to more technical roles. So you can do many things. And Andrea just talked about picking up some of her skills that she'd learnt in her degree and refreshing them. There's nothing stopping anybody coming in and doing some executive type learning whilst they're in a different role in the data center sector. If you want to get into the industry, there are so many roles that you could start with.
Are there any specific reasons why you think that engineering might see fewer women compared to other job functions that are within the industry? Is it something that starts from, just the STEM education and, or is it something about, that when you are studying engineering, it's the data center industry is just not something you're made aware of as you might for aviation or some of the other sectors that are out there?
I think a little bit of both. I think engineering in general sees fewer women than men, and that probably is not a consequence of any single reason, but a combination of factors. And this also depends from country to country as well, is what I notice. I think maybe here there's a lot of perception that engineering is very hands-on, manly, like the end installer type of work, whereas really that's not necessarily true, and it depends a lot on your thinking capabilities rather than your physical strength. So women can thrive in engineering just as much as men can, and I think that they definitely have a lot of opportunities in engineering. But also I think sometimes it's tricky also when you hear kids in school saying, oh, maths is not for girls or physics not for girls. And I mean, maths is for girls, physics is for girls, chemistry is for girls, science is for girls, right? There's no reason why we should start that divide at the very start. We should encourage everyone to do it and then see how good they are at it, how much it interests them, and then see if they want to take it further or not, rather than starting with the narrative from the very start. And I think parents and teachers play a big role here, but yeah, I would definitely encourage younger kids to consider it.
I also think I agree with all of those points, but I also think that the industry needs to do a better job of describing what the industry is. Because for most people, particularly younger children, they all use digital services. They all have their phone as an extension of their body and use, all of the social media apps and so on. But they don't really understand how that works and what's behind it. If we better explained it and got some more excitement about this fantastic digitally enabled life and how data centers are right at the heart of that, then there might be more young people, not just ladies, not just girls, but all young people inspired to come and join this fabulous industry.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% true. I think there's so much of the conversation we have is to, as an industry, and yes, there's times and places where, as we're talking amongst ourselves, we need to address the technical issues, we need to address the power issues, we need to talk about those things in a way that, talking peer to peer. But so much of that time, that same language and that same tone of voice gets carried to the outside world that doesn't necessarily understand that, nor do they have any interest in it. And so how we talk about the industry and show what the benefit of it is actually really important as we're trying to recruit. I mean, the industry is growing too fast. The talent gap is still a very big issue that has to be addressed. We can't afford to just, steal people from other companies within the industry. We need to we need to make recruit people in from the outside, and sometimes how we talk about ourselves doesn't do us any favors either. So, Andrea, one of the things that you kind of mentioned about, the role that parents and teachers and that kind of stuff plays, I mean, that's always so influential at the younger ages. But as young women kind of go into university or start early in their careers, like, what do you both think about the how important role modeling is? I mean, Dawn, seeing someone like you who is in a CEO role, and you're very open, and you're very accessible in terms of your in terms of, telling your story, and in terms of sharing with people how you came to this point. I mean, how do you each view that role modeling, that, should we do, what should we be doing better in that regard?
And so I don't recall particularly having any role models that I could look up to. It was only when I found the Women's Engineering Society and learnt more about some fantastic historical role models and trailblazers who were women engineers that I then sort of got more inspired. So that's why I work so hard to try and make sure that people see role models and to showcase fabulous women working in this sector and more broadly in engineering, because just feeling and being able to see that somebody out there has already done it and that it's normal and it's okay. And anybody in any job role has challenges. Trying to assume that nobody will have any challenges at any point is probably unhelpful. So describing the challenges and how you might navigate them is really beneficial for everybody, I think.
Yeah, and not talking about the challenges don't make them go away. They still exist. So it's to understand what might be coming ahead of you, or if someone else has had to address that same issue, that is always so much more helpful.
But also talking about the brilliant things. So we mustn't focus on just the brilliant things or just the challenges. We need to get that sort of level playing field, that understanding in the round.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And even it's interesting because, there's things like, if you like to travel, this is a great industry to be in, because, all of these, so many companies are done on a global scale, and there's opportunities to live and work and travel to other countries for work. And there's just so many almost soft skill measures that, are present a benefit as well. So yeah, there is absolutely the challenge side of it, but then there's the other side of it of, doing critical work and, getting other sort of the soft tangible benefits that make a difference too. So what are the myths that or misconceptions that you think people have about engineering careers that might deter women from coming into the field?
I think the misconceptions, and Andrea sort of mentioned it earlier, in terms of it's the person they see turn up at their house to fix the washing machine that really people associate with engineering. So a misunderstanding of what engineering is and engineering isn't, and what different types of roles there are within engineering, and whether it's entirely practical or entirely theoretical. And I think people seem to polarize it into, oh, you've got to be hands on dirty with a spanner in your hand fixing something, or you've got to design something from first principles. And yes, both of those are true. There are engineers that do exactly those things, but there's also a myriad of things in between the two that you can do as an engineer. And I have never designed anything, nor have I ever fixed anything. I've spent my whole life managing people, managing processes, understanding how things work and helping to navigate to solutions, but never actually fixing or designing anything myself. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of opportunity in the middle there, which will suit every type of person.
No, absolutely. And that's a good reminder too, because it's not a one size fits all field by any stretch of the definition. So it's a good reminder in that regard for sure. So do you think there's anything else we need to be doing in terms of building kind of the pipeline for, for more women engineers to come into the field? Is there something that we should be doing different at the university level? Is there something we should be doing different in our recruiting process? I mean, obviously you both have just spoken about the fact that helping people understand the variety of roles that you can play within engineering is certainly, there's a strong education element in all of that. But is there anything else that you've either encountered elsewhere or, or maybe Dawn for you in a different industry that you've seen them do particularly well?
There's an awful lot of outreach activity already where lots of people, different engineering societies and so on, go into schools and run engineering clubs or run sort of engineering taster sessions. And oftentimes those are targeted at people who are already intrigued by engineering. So you're kind of preaching to the choir. There was a study run a few years ago called the Five Tribes Study, and it analysed what young people think about their careers and how they engage with future careers. And most often they look to their immediate family or friends and will sort of follow in their footsteps effectively. So they call that STEM capital. So if you already know somebody within your immediate family or friend circle who is an engineer, then you might be tempted to go into engineering. What we need to do better is break out of that and allow young people to understand the choices they're making and understand the possibilities that are there. So appealing to people around the purpose of this job, literally solving everybody's digitally enabled future. This is critical infrastructure. We have a real purpose to solve for this and for sustainability, all within this industry. So describing that better and having better interventions at schools and colleges to allow people to choose not only engineering, but choose engineering in the data center sector is vitally important.
Yeah.
I would also agree with Dawn and say that really, if it's our job to sort of make it clear to future engineers what we do, how many different roles there are, what the purpose is, how rewarding the industry is, how you can get to be at the forefront of technology and innovation, and just let them realize that this is a good career choice. Because otherwise, if we just take a stand, a parent stand, and we just deliver a speech and then we leave, and then they think about something else, it's not we're I think gonna have limited success. Whereas if we showcase all the right things that we should, then they will come to that conclusion themselves. Because if you think of yourself when you were 18, did you want to do what your parents told you to do, or did you want to do what you wanted to do?
Right.
Probably what you wanted to do, right? So we need to make them come to that conclusion.
Yeah. But it's funny because I mean, and Andrea, you said this in the beginning of, your parents being engineers absolutely influenced you. My dad had a engineering background and worked in Silicon Valley. And guess what? That was the first thing I did too. I went to go work in Silicon Valley. It's never ever would have thought about that as a career path, but that does absolutely, to play a role in it for sure. But making it more attractive, helping people understand the criticality of the industry is something else that I heard from all the women in the book, that it's so important to them to be in an industry that is, that is at the backbone of so many of the ways that we, even right now, the conversation that we're having, how many times a day, we touch a data center. I mean, people probably would be shocked by the number of ways that they're interacting with a data center without even realizing it. And that kind of goes back to your point, Dawn, about doing a better job of communicating that to them.
Absolutely.
Andrea, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to a young woman who's considering this field, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to go for it. I think that this is a very supportive and collaborative industry where it's possible to progress and achieve amazing things, as well as to work with incredible people. And you won't necessarily find this in every industry. I think that there are so many opportunities out there. And so see where your strengths and where your interests lie, and then do the best that you can to succeed in that area. And I think also if we're talking about entry-level roles here, then I would say that it's best to choose the opportunity where you can learn the most and be surrounded by knowledgeable people than anything else. Like everything else will follow later. But the point at the start is to learn as much as you can, to be surrounded by people who know what they're doing, who know how to deliver a project, who know how to explain the technical aspects of the project, who understand the industry, because you will pick up so many things from them. You will learn how to treat your clients properly. You will learn how to do the engineering properly. You will learn how to manage a project, how to manage a team. You will learn everything if you're at the right place, and the right place being the place where you can learn the most.
Yeah. And I think that's the other part that people probably don't necessarily understand about the industry is that, the data center sector is asking questions is encouraged. Like people, are more than happy to help someone learn something that they didn't know before. The more that you ask, the more, curious and inquisitive that you are on it, people seem to really respond to that in a really positive way. And I don't think that's the case in every industry. And so I think to know that that's a very natural path of growth and education, it for some people is going to be really important.
For sure. I would also say that asking questions is like extremely important, but also everything that you can sort of find out on your own, or at least do some preparatory work before you go and ask the question, shows even more engagement, because then you've tried your best to find out the answer. Maybe you learn something additional to what you were originally searching for. And then you're going to discuss from a more knowledgeable point than having known nothing and just asking the question.
And I completely agree. I think coming into the industry, be curious, always own your own career. So seek out the thing that you want. But importantly, we spoke about different industries and how they behave and how women can thrive in different industries. This industry, the data center sector, is the most supported that I've ever felt through a women's network than any other industry I've been in. Whilst we don't have the most women of any sector, for sure, it's literally a fantastic community that I've never experienced before. So being towards the back end of my career rather than at the start of it, I find that quite extraordinary.
Yeah, no, and that I've heard that from a lot of people in the last, what's about a year that I've been, working on this project, is how much that rings true for so many women. I mean, I think even there was one conversation I had where they said, I feel a little guilty that we have all these resources available to us because we don't need it in the same way that I've needed it in other, companies and other industries that I've worked at. But it's just this abundance of, of women's groups for, every different type of job function, of, of the support, of the mentors, and also the difference in women in senior leadership roles, very much willing to lend a helping hand to help people kind of come up through, whatever their own challenges are. There's none of this attitude of kind of pulling up the ladder behind them and saying, well, I had to figure it out, so you go figure it out. There's really a very strong feeling and perception that, everybody is very much willing to help and kind of do what they can to grow the pool of people that are here. And so I think it's, it's fantastic to see, and it's, and it's fantastic to be a part of, for sure.
It's a brilliant support network.
I would also agree. I definitely enjoy all the networking events with successful women in the industry, with women who are just joining the industry, and just hearing more about their experiences, hearing advice of someone like Dawn, right? And just learning more. But I could say that in my experience, I've been very supported by men in the industry as well, who are also very encouraging, very motivating, very supportive. So I think that the industry generally has a very good collaborative spirit, not just amongst women.
No, agreed. And I think it's the critical nature of the industry. It's the innovative work that has to be done. I think it is genuinely, like, there is a very strong collaborative spirit to it that I think one of my recurring themes with this book is there's too many good things that we're not talking about. So, I'm glad we're taking these opportunities and doing this today to kind of talk about that a little bit more. So it actually feels like a really great place to wrap up, because I feel like we've ended on a really high part of the conversation. So thank you both so much for being here, and I've really enjoyed having you on as guests.
Thank you as well.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Critical Careers. A special thank you to our sponsor, CBRE, for their support in helping us share the stories of the people shaping the future of digital infrastructure. To learn more about CBRE, visit www.cbre.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, share, and follow the podcast. Thanks for listening.